Yeah. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening to you all and very warm welcome on 12 You the Nurse Talk Show. Thank you very much. We are here because of you and we are continuous getting lovely feedback, appreciation, love from you all, and we are truly in depth and we are really grateful and anticipating same support, love, and let's hope we will be celebrating our 100 episode together. Well, this month we are celebrating the month of friendship, and therefore we have decided that we will be calling speakers who are not directly from the nursing, but definitely they are the great support for the nurses. They are the pillar for the nursing fraternity. So, with that note, we today we are having an amazing speaker with us. And before then, that I just quickly request my team to just unmute themselves and quickly introduce yourself. Yes, Krish, unmute yourself.
Hi everyone, I am Chris Thomas. I am an assistant professor in psychiatric nursing from Mount Abu, Rajasthan, and welcome everyone to today's special occasion, today's special session, I must say. Thank you.
Yeah, Geeta. Geeta.
Hello, good evening to you all. I'm Geeta Sina. I'm an emergency nurse and I have also experience of nurse informatics system. And thanks to come here.
Yeah, Uma ma'am. By the time I request Rekha Di, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Please. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Uma.
You're audible, ma'am.
I'm Uma Handa. I'm a retired nurse. I think I can be mother of all of you. Am I?
Granny. Thank you, ma'am.
Not granny for you. I'm a great granny now. Not only granny. But for you all, I'm a mother.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I request Rekha Di, please unmute yourself and speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rekha Anil Kumar, a patient nurse more than 2.5 decades. Welcome to the show, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shri ma'am.
I'm Sri Devi and I am a nurse. And I'm not just a nurse or only a nurse. I am a nurse. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. With that note, I thank you each and everyone, and thank you very much, Panchali, for accepting our invitation. Well, let me say, Panchali is such a modest and such a genuine person I ever come across. The moment we were looking for her and we wrote a mail to her, and promptly she said yes for our show, without any formal conversation. So we are really grateful for that, Panchali. As you can see, I am really feel speechless when I really wanted to talk about her. Her work was the first work. She did a study on nurses as a labor and from the politics of labor side. So she will be the better person to speak about her work. So without taking much of time, over to you, Panchali. And thank you very much once again. She's an independent researcher in the developmental sector. And thank you very much for being on the show. And today we are going to have a new arena of thought, because she's going to change our perception and she's going to put so many new ideas and new thoughts pertaining to gender and the profession. Yes, over to you, Panchali. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Rupa, for inviting me to this show. I must admit, I'm a little nervous because all of you are very experienced nurses, whereas I have only spent a few years doing fieldwork in hospitals. So yes, with all that repetition, I would like to talk about my research a little bit with all of you. And so I just want to take a moment to delve on the title, the crisis in social reproduction, nurses as healthcare professionals. So what is social reproduction? I mean, that is a question that came out from all of you and some of you. So I would like to just put things in perspective by saying that social reproduction is activities that are required for making life, for maintaining life, and generationally replacing life. So whether it's giving birth, rearing children, cleaning, cooking, looking after the elderly, all activities that go to reproduce life. And as all of you know, this is mostly done by women. So, from antiquity right to contemporary time, this is labor, which is called reproductive labor, has been relegated to women, and it's also very devalued. So all of us know in our personal capacities, when we do housework, most of the times you're faced with is that, you're just doing a housework. This is not even work. So, and the space for the production of this reproductive labor has always been the family. However, the last few decades, we are seeing that there's been an increasing commodification of women's labor. Many such activities have that were done by women within the household are now coming out in the labor market. So we are seeing a lot of restaurants, takeaway food, laundries, creche, play schools. What it has done is that it has commodified a lot of elements of housework and childcare. And one of the most striking in the past few years, the past few decades, has been the commodification of work involved in the care of the sick. So whether it's in the hospital, as nursing homes and more nursing homes are opening up, or whether it is in the home, so you hire someone who has some element of training in nursing and to take what is called the house case. So this growth of this healthcare sector has been phenomenal in this country. However, it has also been very unregulated. So all of you must be knowing that. So despite there being such a big growth in the industry, there has not been an equal growth in terms of employment, in terms of good, solid employment. But there has been a lot of unregulated, precarious employment. So just focusing on nursing and not the other elements of healthcare work, one could ask that, what has this commodification done to nursing? Has it changed the kind of social, cultural, economic value that we give to this kind of work? So just if I take a couple of minutes to just look into the history of the profession. So, the trained nurse has always been, at the center of modernization and professionalization of this service. So in the West, before Florence Nightingale's reforms came in, nursing in public hospitals was in the hands of monastic orders, which is like nuns. So the term sister has stuck on, or the untrained woman like a domestic worker. But the progress of nursing into a modern profession, a lot of times it has been accelerated by Florence Nightingale's reforms, was also in a way to eliminate the untrained working class woman and make this into an occupation or service for middle class trained women. But in India, the trajectory has been a little different because we were a colonized country. So in pre-colonial India, we don't know who the nurse was. So it is generally assumed that because nursing is associated with body fluids, detritus, it is also seen as polluting labor. So we know there's a caste hierarchy. And therefore, nursing was probably relegated to women who were very low in the caste hierarchy. But the professionalization and the modernization of this occupation started emerging when British Army officials wanted proper healthcare in military hospitals. So there were attempts to professionalize nursing, and there was also an attempt to induct, because a lot of European nurses came in, so there's also an attempt to induct in Indian women as staff nurses. But from my reading in the archives and my reading of scholars who worked on the history of nursing, that it was not a very successful venture, because first, it was very difficult for Indian women in the 19th century to actually enter professions. So even if education for women had expanded, there was not an equal opportunity for women to enter professions. So those who ventured into medicine preferred to become doctors. They did not really want to be nurses. But over the years, after independence, there has been a lot of investment in nursing training and education. And I think very importantly, international migration and the potential it has for both social and economic mobility, it inspired a lot of middle class women to enter the profession. So now nursing is actually seen as a solid profession for middle class women to enter. So now, giving this history, if I look at it, Though we know that there are a lot of men who are entering nursing, and of course there are a lot of women who have entered become doctors. But if we see statistics, if we look at the WHO reports, the country-wise statistics, we will see that in India, that the most nursing still remains an overwhelmingly women's profession, and doctors are all overwhelmingly men. So how does one explain this kind of a discrimination? So if you see that the art of healing is organized in a manner where both doctors and nurses are seen as caregivers, but there are internal hierarchies within nurses and doctors. So there's kind of a binary that operates, the cure, care, technical, menial, skilled, unskilled, and this is like gendered. So cure, technical work, skilled work is very easily considered as male work, and care, menial, unskilled, which is related to emotion, is seen as feminine work. And this influences the way both doctors and nurses, the way their professions have panned out. And if you really see, it is reflected very much in the pay structures, in the policies, in the budgets, etc., where doctors are rewarded much more than nurses. So if you look at this gendering, you will see that very easily doctors come across as authoritarian figures. They are seen as the epitome of knowledge. They are irreplaceable, whereas nurses are constructed more as caregivers, as semi-skilled workers, and therefore someone we can easily replace according to the healthcare structure. And one of the prime examples of this, I feel that I was very shocked to know that a 3.5 year GNM course is seen as a diploma. It is not seen as a degree. So that for me was very shocking, that given the amount of training, the intensive hard work, the medical component, why is this GNM course seen as a diploma? So I think one of the tensions that stay in nursing is what counts as nursing care. So is it medical work or is it care work? So what constitutes as nursing care? So in my field work, in my research with nurses, I felt that there was a lot of emphasis on nurses on, they themselves devalued fundamental nursing care. So, the maximum caregiving that was happening in all the three places, the three hospitals where I did my field work, it was given to ancillary workers, the attendants. So I think a question that we as scholars who are looking at medical sociology, and you all as nurses, as policymakers, as leaders, would like to probably think about is what should nursing education entail? So more medical knowledge, and that would mean a relegation of fundamental nursing care to ancillary nursing workers. Would that be how nursing education can be envisaged? I think that is a tension that is fundamental to understanding how the profession has evolved and how the profession continues to evolve. The second question that I would like to bring up, again related to nursing labor and nursing care, is the stigma associated with it. And this is something that all nurses have told me, that there's a lot of stigma associated with it. So in our country, it's a caste system, Brahminical patriarchy, how it operates, in a manner which devalues and it stigmatizes any labor that is menial and manual. So how then do nurses negotiate the stigma associated with menial labor that is central to nursing work, because it's care, it's bodily care? So work that reproduces life is work that is most devalued in our society. They are the worst paid, they are the first to be fired, they face constant sexual harassment and often direct violence. So we know that those who work to reproduce life are mostly women, which also makes this feminine component of nursing and other kinds of professions also makes it that much more vulnerable. So given this larger societal structure, where menial manual labor that deals with body is looked down upon, how does the nurse then carve out a role for herself where she's given that recognition and that acknowledgement that she's integral, not peripheral, but integral to healing processes? So then that means, what is it that we need to do? What is it as nurses should be doing? I think it is to politicize care and to make an argument that labor that reproduces life is labor that sustains the world and the economy. Care is not just an unskilled emotive labor. It is emotive labor, but it's also very skilled labor. So anybody who has been taking care of a small child or a sick person knows that it really, it's challenging. Not just giving care as in bodily care, but to build a kind of a affective economy where you take care of the person needs a lot of skill. It's not something that you can brush away. And that is integral to healing process, because medicine can only do that much. The well-being and the health of a person depends on the person's environment, and nurses are central to making that environment a very caring process. So that will bring me to the third question that I wanted to bring up, that how are nurses seen as workers? So we are seeing that there's a pandemic, and we are seeing also who are essential workers. Who are the workers that are making the world go around today? The teachers, the nurses, the cleaners. Without them, we cannot see ourselves through this crisis. And this is what, we have really understood. So the coronavirus crisis has actually made very clear that care work and social reproduction, that is work that reproduces life, are the essential work of society. It is not peripheral, but essential work of society. So do nurses see themselves as essential workers, as healthcare professionals with rights? Or do they see themselves as part of a moral economy? So what is it that I mean when I say a moral economy? So, when I was reading a lot of literature around nursing, I was seeing words like, angels of mercy or noble women, with a focus on spirituality, a focus on sacrifice. But you see, that's fine. But what does this do? What does this focus on spirituality and sacrifice do? It takes away from a language of justice. It takes away from a language of rights. So if I focus on spiritual femininity, saying you are an angel of mercy, and you cannot talk about working conditions, you cannot talk about wages, you cannot talk about exploitative working conditions because you are a noble woman. I think this kind of a rhetoric, it is where the healthcare system is structured in such a way that nurses are encouraged to see themselves as handmaids to doctor, not as independent professionals who are at the forefront of the healing process. So I think that is very important. Can nurses see themselves as professionals, as workers with rights, who have a right, and this is very important, to have a right to protest if the working conditions are not good. So also bringing the question of rights and protests, I think in the recent years, we've been noticing that there's been a lot of strikes by nurses. But there's also been a lot of suggestion from scholars that this is also because more men are joining the profession. So men coming into the profession has also meant a change, a shift in the language of understanding nurses as noble women to understanding nurses as workers with rights. So what does this imply? I mean, if I make an argument that because men are joining into the profession is getting politicized, there are strikes, there are conversation on rights, and we are talking about proper wages, we are talking about proper working conditions. So that would basically imply that women nurses are a docile workforce and that they will not speak up against workplace exploitation. But then if you look at the history of women workers, where, like including teachers, that women have been at the forefront of many strikes. But if you look at the history of nursing profession, there has been very little protest. So my question is something I also kept thinking about is, and I asked a lot of nursing leaders when I was doing my field work, is that do you feel that being a nurse, coming with the nursing education, with its strong emphasis on caregiving, it comes in the way of identifying as a worker with rights, which include the right to protest, to strike, to make demands. So doctor strikes are very frequent. Doctors, at least in the state that I belong to, West Bengal, where I did my research, doctors go on strike, and they have these shift works where some doctors are there on duty, but doctors go on strike. But rarely, I've not seen a single instance, except for maybe one, in the research that I have done in West Bengal, of nurses going on strike. So I think that what this pandemic has done is it has laid bare and made very obvious the very exploitative nature of capitalist workplace. So we have seen that doctors and nurses are not being paid. They're not being given protective equipments and other protective gears. And there's been a lot of protests around it. For instance, when I look at it, when I see that ASHA workers, for instance, who are also part of the healthcare system, they're a completely feminine workforce. And they have gone on strike saying that unless they're given the necessary pay and protection, they will not be in the front line fighting this epidemic. So I believe that COVID-19, this pandemic, is a moment of reckoning for all those who work in the healthcare sector, that it is an opportunity to question that why is it that those who reproduce society, who do reproductive work, social reproduction, who reproduce human life, are treated so badly? Is it because they're mostly women? Is that the question? Is it the gendering of the profession that makes it so easy to treat nurses as docile, not to give them their rights? Or is it that nursing education and training, with its emphasis on sacrifice, on spirituality, that comes into the way of organizing effectively? So I think these are some of the things that I wanted to ask, because I'm not here to lecture anyone, because I'm here to learn from you. So these are some of the points that I thought that were important. There's a lot of things that my research brought up, but these are some of the points that I thought that I would talk about, I would bring up, and I would like that we have discussion on. So yes, this is what I wanted to say. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ali. We were all spellbound and we are actually speechless. And let me tell you, today I'm totally naive and I'm totally illiterate in this subject. So I cannot even raise a single question. I really wanted to request Sridevi ma'am to please unmute yourself and start question answer round, because we are just looking few questions from the chat box, and if it is not there, then ma'am, being a sociology postgraduate, she can be the better person to moderate today's session. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you very much,
No,
sparing my
Rupa,
soul.
that's not. No, I think you can as well do. I think Panchali, you have done. I'm actually totally unprepared as well, but will do my best. Uh, uh, like what you said is absolutely right. Like there are chat messages which say that you have hit the nail. Now my question, I mean, I can straight away answer. I'm actually educated in 1980 to 84. So you look probably even at the sometime maybe earlier than you were born. It is true. We were taught, oh my God, the amount of moral values that were given to us is the reason why we are like this. At 58 now, I am on the forefront of telling all these youngsters. I even challenged Rupa the other day and I said, why are we shying away from asking for our rights? Collective bargaining was something that was mentioned in our books. So let me tell you, when I did masters, there was this term called collective bargaining, but never explained to us or told how this can be done or anything of that sort. So you have hit the nail, and I think this sociological perspective is extremely important. Now what I want to do is, what is your message to these youngsters? You ask them questions. Can you tell us from your society perspective, like you told us, the doctors go on strike, ASHA workers go on strike, and so do nurses. You're right, even men entering nursing is the 100% reason. Recently we have seen some protest happening, but even then it is not sufficient. And I think by the end of my life, I would definitely like to see a change in terms of us women and as nurses getting our rightful place in society. And the sad thing is, sorry, I'm taking a little extra time. It's not so much in the Western culture. If you see nurses in the Western culture yes, they do have similar problems, but they aren't as oppressed as we are in this country. So how can we bring about a change? Are women in other fields going ahead with these kind of issues, and something what we should do? Is it only education? Do we change educational curriculum? Will we be able to, because we don't want to reach the other extreme. Yes, there is a danger. So how do we find our balance?
So shall we take a few questions and then, or should I just respond? Would you like me-
No.
Yeah, I have a question, ma'am. Can I take, because the same question I'm just seeing on a chat box also. If you don't mind, can I ask that question,
You
ma'am?
continue. Yeah.
Shri ma'am, thank you very much. Well, Panchali, there is a question from the chat box, and it was in my mind too. Because being a chat show, we really wanted to know why you have chosen that nursing as a profession. Because let me tell you, there is another aspect of nursing. Because we are more of female dominated profession. Why you chosen nursing for your study?
So I wanted to work on women and work, for my PhD. I wanted to look at the labor force. So when I actually looked at statistics, when I looked at the reports, I looked at the census and the NSSO data, which gives us a labor force participation. I saw that women were dropping out, women's labor force participation had fallen rapidly everywhere, and the only place where it was increasing was education and medicine. So that brought me to thinking about I was thinking doctors or teachers or nurses, who could I work with? Then I noticed that there's been a lot of work on teachers and doctors, but there's been no academic work on nurses. So all the nursing books that are out there from a medical point of view, they're from the community of nurses, but from outside view, a sociological perspective on what is nursing labor. When I started looking at all of that, I started speaking to a few nurses. I visited some of the colleges and schools of nursing. I spoke to some of the faculty members, some of the nurses. And then it was very interesting because they would tell me, yes, please do. Nobody talks about us. And then they would say that, so when I asked, do you protest that, all these problems that you're telling me, do you have protests? Do you have strikes? I mean, what do you do? And they were like, no, I don't know why. Everybody said, I don't know why, but we don't have that kind of we have unions. It's not that we don't have unions, but we don't have that culture of protesting and asking for rights. So that really intrigued me. That why is it that such educated women who are part of the health workforce are not able to organize effectively to ask for the same rights such as the doctors? So that led me on to kind of do research on nursing. And I also realized that the kind of sociological work on nursing that has been done has been related to the question of migration. As if to talk about nursing is to only talk about migration, as if that the nurses who continue to work in this country, they are not important, or that conversation is just not happening. So I just felt that this is one of the reasons why I should not look at migration, but look at the women who are continuing nursing practices in this country. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am. Shri ma'am, over to you. Yeah, I think there's some problem. Yeah, Panchali, there's another.
No, I was not muted. Dr. Nagendra Prakash is also with us here. He's actually a guide for many nurses in their PhD study. He is a sociologist by profession. He and his wife, Dr. Ratna Prakash, have been great champions of nursing. He has just mentioned here one thing that has come in the comment section. Two things he says. One is he thinks gender is not the reason. He's saying it is the teachers, it is the syllabus that is. He's been many years in observing nursing field, probably very, very senior to us. He says it's the syllabus and the teacher. Nothing else counts in creating a professional identity. And he strongly believes that is the cause of everything. Now, I'm sure, I don't know, will you be able to comment on the syllabus or the educational system from your general experience?
So I will not, but in a way, I still hold on that gendering of the profession is what has come in the way of professionalization. But saying which, I also agree that it is the education process. Because when I did speak to nurses when I used to interview them and I used to spend time with them, they would say it is our education that prevents us from behaving in a certain manner. We are taught. If you see the Florence Nightingale, the pledge, you will also see that, I don't remember the pledge, but if you will see that there are components. In fact, the kind of sociological literature that I read also would say that, nursing education is more focused on character. And
this is the question or this?
Focus more on character and less on medical component, as if, is building the nurse's character. But I think when you are talking about a medical profession, of course, there are probably some moral lessons, but focusing on the nurse's character is, and not on the medical aspect of her education, does come in the way of seeing yourselves as professionals. So I agree that nursing education has a very central role, but I also believe that gendering of the profession also has a significant role.
Okay. We'll have to, thank you so much. I think Dr. Nagendra Prakash agreed with your answer, and I myself see that too. For everybody else, we will give you time in the end. We do not take questions in between so that we can listen to everybody. Thank you so much for saying this. But, and I agree that medical profession probably is more on professionalism, and we are more on character building. And is this necessary? This is something that all of us as senior teachers, the educators must ask ourselves for sure. What else do you, Rupa, is there any other question that you see? Panchali, what else do you see as reason? Yes, gender is correct. But in Western countries, the gender ratio still remains the same. That they still have 90, everywhere it's 9 to 10% of men in the nursing profession, but they don't see this much of, I don't say trouble, what's the right word to use? This much of discrimination as we see. How do you see it?
So I think it is a stigma that is associated with nursing, because that is something that I don't know if that is Bengal specific, because the Kerala model is probably different, because states are also different. But it's the nature of labor, any work. So, that is social reproduction. Any work that deals with reproduction, that deals with that reproductive labor is not counted as work. So my wife does no work. It's such a standard response that a lot of men have. But we know how much work women do at home. But that work that's not produce good, but is service, is not considered as work. And I think one of the reasons why nurses face so much discrimination is the very fact that they are doing reproductive labor. What they are doing is, and that begins with a denial that nurses also do medical work. First is to deny that nurses are doing medical work, and then to say that what they are doing is caring. Caring is not work. Anyone can do it, So I think that is then there, and we also devalue women. We devalue women's work. Like, cooking and cleaning. How many people actually, all the chefs are men, but in the house, all the cooking is done by women. So, minute a service is seen as productive and profit-making, hugely profit-making, men take over. But when it is not seen as profit-making, it is devalued, and it is not given. I think that is one of the reasons why nurses face so much of discrimination, is because it is women's work. Caring and cleaning and everything that goes around. Any of us who has a sick person at home knows how much care goes in, how much labor goes into kind of looking after that person. Just giving medicine or consulting with the doctor is not enough. There's a constant buzz of activity around that person, even sitting and talking to that person. And that labor is not considered as work. Therefore, that is just seen as something you do and anyone can do. And I believe that one of the reasons why nurses are discriminated is because their labor is not counted. So I think that, I don't know if that answers, but yeah, I feel this is a very strong component.
Okay, Dr. Nagendra Prakash would also like to take something in the end. That's all right. So how do we now, for example, if we want to move forward as women and as nurses, because nurses constitute 50% or more of the health profession. And we are also into discussion of these gender issues. How do you see, how does it happen in other professions? This is what I'm asking. Or is it in India everywhere the same? Every profession where women are involved is like this? Or are we worse off?
No, because there are very few women only profession, right? So nursing is actually one. So even bankers, there are a lot of women bankers, and there are a lot of other things, and they have strong unions, very strong bankers unions and other kinds of professional unions. So this is something that nurses lack, and that is the peculiarity of nursing, because very little women's work. So if you look at the domestic worker, or the primary school teacher, and the kind of work that is given to women, not given to women, the kind of work that women do, and the kind of sectors they enter into when they enter the labor market. So as children, when we aspire to do jobs, what are the kind of jobs that are considered respectable, so as women to do? So teachers is one thing. So these kind of women intensive jobs is very few, and nursing is probably one of the few, one of the only, I can't think of anything that middle class women enter, right? So domestic workers, for instance, are working class women, and they find it even more difficult to unionize, though there's been a lot of talk now. So in that sense, I feel that, nursing being a women intensive occupation where there are more women, yet they are not, and they are middle class women, they are educated women, yet they are not encouraged to see themselves as workers. They are not encouraged to make strong associations that can, prevent many kinds of exploitative practices. I think it's very important that nurses unionize, that they actually put across that there should be reforms in nursing education. There should be reforms in, why is it so difficult to get promotions? Nurses have told me that they take leave and they do BSc nursing, but they come back and they're stuck in the same place. That extra additional degree has not helped them to negotiate the thing. Whereas, so these kind of things, why are nurses stagnating? These are the kind of issues that nursing leaders, nursing reformers should take it up. And this should come from within the nursing fraternity. It should come from within the community. And I think the only way it can do is if they can come together as a strong professional association. So in that sense, I don't know. I mean, do the Training Nurses Association of India or the Nursing Council, from whatever little I've read of their websites or whatever little that I've spoken to a few of them, they don't really hit the nail on its head. They don't really encourage that kind of a unionization. They don't encourage. So I think some other kind of a forum must be created where certain basic rights need to be put across very clearly.
Okay. So that's, I mean, just to wrap it, Panchali is saying that it is the right way forward to be unionized. And believe me, Panchali, that even till today, people are afraid. I don't know how, this is a psyche that probably will take maybe another generation to understand that it is not wrong to ask for our rights. It is not wrong. We are working hard as a profession. It is something, I mean, and we have professional knowledge, Panchali, our education system. We are into so much of science. Our art is communication, caring, etc. But this is all on the strong foundation of science. So I really don't know why I don't say I don't know. We should emphasize on the scientific portion of our care, and it is inevitable, like you said. Without nurses, not 1 inch in the hospital will move. Whatever is prescribed, I always say, if I heard the drug wrong and I administered it wrong, that's it for the patient. But how do we bring about and I have another interesting portion is, how do we make the public a part of our movement? Because I feel in most other countries, I'm registered nurse in Australia and UK, not to say this for that reason, that people in general are so aware of nursing. In people who receive care are more aware, while in our country they think the physicians are the only ones who can do anything for them to get better. How do we what can we do about this now?
I think this kind of societal attitude, I think it's worldwide, it's rampant, it's across. So if you see in US, I was reading a book by a sociologist where she, not just nurses, all kinds of caregivers, and she talks about how nurses are paid so less as compared to other healthcare, as a pharmacist or as a doctor. So anyone who has supposedly technical knowledge, right? So I think women's work, nursing is devalued, but it's different in terms of it's in terms of like it differs from country to country, but the overarching thing is that it is more devalued than other technical work. And this is something nurses in the US have also complained, that a couple of them that I spoke to. And also it's I think this is a societal attitude that we have, that towards women and women's work. And I think we are struggling to change it, right? So as I call myself a feminist, and as a feminist I feel that these are women's issues. Nursing issues should be linked with the women's movement and the workers movement. So nurses are not linked to the women's movement, they are not linked. So as women, we have got our rights through the women's movement, right to education and everything else, you know, protection from violence, all of that. So I think as nurses should also, if they acknowledge that it is gendering of the profession that is leading to this kind of an exploitation, then the linkages with women's movement is essential, linking with the workers movement is essential. Only when we stand by other workers, we stand by other women, will other women and other workers stand by us, right? So these kind of overarching kind of interconnections, the networks, not to see nurses as isolated community that is only, they have to only deal with their problems, but to see this as a larger societal problem. I think that would be a very unique way, so that there is a cross section of movements that are happening. I think that would be very, very essential.
Okay, I get your point that I don't know how many, I mean, we are all taught a bit of sociology in nursing, but I don't know how many of us remember. When we say feminism, I just wanted to clarify quickly. Feminism, there are different theories in nursing, and feminism happens to be one of those theories. Like we have functional theory and conflict theory and interaction theory, and feminist theory is another aspect of the science of sociology. So don't take it in, for those of you who are hearing this word, or maybe Panchali can just quickly clarify to everybody when you say you are a feminist, because you know, there again another stigma starts. So please can you clarify that? I'm clear, but I don't think everybody is clear on this.
I think
Thank you very much, ma'am, raising this point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think feminism, very in a nutshell to put, is a feminist is anyone who acknowledges that there is a discrimination between men and women, and they challenge this discrimination. Now there are various schools of feminists, and they challenge they see the root as different for different schools of feminism. So some see it in work, socialist, Marxist feminists would see it in labor, radical feminists see it in violence, that violence against women is the way they are being controlled. So different schools approach it. What is the root cause of the discrimination between men and women? But a feminist, doesn't matter which school you belong to, is someone who questions this discrimination and fights against it, who challenges this discrimination. I think a feminist can be anybody, even a young girl telling her parents that I am going to go to college, or I don't want to get married right now, or I want a career. Even that is actually an expression of feminism. So I know there is a stigma attached to it, because there is some people are a little scared of this feminism thing, but I think a little bit of reading, and now with internet there's so much available on the internet, that if you can read up a little bit on what feminism is and why is it so important for our lives, it's just not about women, it is equally important in men's lives. Because it, you know, when you question this, it is, you know, patriarchy is very difficult for men too, and men who are nursing, I don't know what is the kind of stigma they face. I have not talked to male nurses, but to see, you know, men can't cry, men have to be strong, they have to have technical knowledge, they are not supposed to cook. It can be very challenging for a lot of men who don't want to live up to that stereotype of that brawl and fighting and powerful, brave man. I mean, how many of the men that we know can fit into the stereotype of the male that patriarchy throws at us? So feminism is just not about women, it is about the unequal structure and the discrimination between men and women. It can be very empowering for men too, to be able to call themselves a feminist and to challenge those gender norms that men face. They also face a lot of gender norms which can make it very difficult.
That's a beautiful answer. And yeah, because I hope everybody is clear on the feminism part of it. And also the movement, what I mean, one of the messages she's giving us is we as nurses should become part of the larger feminism movement. So we really need to now, at the end of this session, be looking out to see what other movements are going on in the country, because this is something that is extremely important. And I think that's an important message. And we will still form, if we went into another other feminist movements and see, as nurses, we still will be a large part of these kind of, I mean, in numbers, we will be very, very strong. So that's a good thing to talk about. Patriarchy, let's come to that. That's another question to, like you really mentioned that even men cannot probably stand this much of patriarchy that we have. I think this is same. It's all over the country. In India, probably, I don't know, do you know the reason we went into this severe patriarchy, or is it because of colonialism, or I think long ago, even before all this came up, women were very strong in India from historical times. But what's gone wrong then?
So we don't have records. So we don't know. Everything is a myth. So were women really strong? Were they not? Nobody really knows how patriarchy started, right? Nobody, we don't know. Some say it's the hunter-gatherer, but that doesn't make sense. Like, so men went out hunting and women were gathering, and that's how gender roles happen. But some say it's childbirth, but it doesn't make sense, because gathering fruits and vegetables is how an economy is sustained, right? The village economy. Hunting happens once a month, if you really look at, that kind of an anthropological work. So there are various theories, but nobody knows how patriarchy, nobody can say with conviction that this is how patriarchy happened. What we know is that patriarchy keeps evolving with time, right? So there was a time when people believed that if women have education, if they have jobs, patriarchy will dissolve, there'll be equality at home. Men will take a share of responsibility of household work. But we are now seeing that those of us who have, who that generation who have studied, who, who were encouraged by their parents to have careers, that, that despite having a job, despite earning, despite being economically independent, there are so many gender norms that we are still struggling with. So now it has become that, oh, now women must earn, work outside at home, and they must work within home. And men are still not taking responsibility at home. So patriarchy keeps, evolving with time, so that even a little bit of freedom that women get it's completely again brought back. So I think that it's very difficult to really look at the root cause of patriarchy. I don't even know how it will help us. But I think what is important is to acknowledge it and to change it. And it's also, I think, very important that we bring up our children differently than how we were brought up, particularly our male children. So I think a lot of work has been done on women. A lot of us know what patriarchy is, we know our rights, etc. But are men, the new generation of men, ready to handle this liberated woman? Are they ready to handle a different kind of femininity? So I think a lot of work needs to be done on masculinity. A lot of ways as mothers, how are we going to bring up our sons? Are we going to bring them up the same way our mothers brought up our brothers? Or are we going to look at it very differently? So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and to identify, to recognize, and to work how patriarchy is affecting both our boys and our girls. So I think that is more important to me than trying to actually figure out, break my head, oh, how did patriarchy start? Because there's no way we can find out.
Yeah. So Panchali, now I'm taking you on another aspect, and we are having two questions. I'm just quickly taking these two questions. As you know that in nursing, we are having 90% women and 10% men. So what if men suppressed by the women? And as I shared with you that 80-20% rule from one of the reputed organization, where they really want 80% nurses should be female at the time of recruitment. So what is your idea? People really wanted to, and especially the male fraternity from the nursing, want to have your idea on that. Over to you, Panchali.
Well, the question is that this discrimination that is happening against male nurses. So I think that it comes down to the same point, that how nursing is seen as women's work. So which is why I say patriarchy is oppressive to men too. You just made my point that patriarchy is not just oppressive to women, it is oppressive to men too. If nursing can be taken out of its gendered structure and seen as a gender neutral job, like all other kinds of jobs are. I don't think men will face that discrimination. They will not face that stigma. So the point is that I think the something that you also shared with me is the fear of politicization, is the fear of unionization, that if men come in. And I don't know if you know this, but till 2013 in West Bengal, there was a government embargo on men training as nurses and men being hired as nurses in the government employment. In 2013, it got overruled. So when I spoke to women nurses, I said, why? They said there are two arguments for it. One is that this is the only profession where women are still getting employment. Women don't get employment in other professions. So we're trying to protect it. And the other is that people are scared that if men come into nursing, they will unionize it, they will politicize it. But both speak equally to patriarchy. Why is it that only women are getting jobs as nurses? Why are women not getting jobs in other? Why are women not training to become doctors? Why should there be this kind of a gender discrimination? So I think, and if men coming into the profession politicizes it, unionizes it, it's a good thing in my opinion. And then as men and women, you can both ask for your rights. And I think it is so important that occupation and work should not be gendered. It should be equally open to all. So there should be equal amount of women in technical work like pharmacy or doctors, and there should be equal amount of men in nursing. And I think that is the only way this kind of a regressive, kind of a discriminatory attitude will dissolve. So yeah.
We are just running with the 6 minutes left. So Panchali, as you know,
tips,
that we really wanted to have tips. Yeah. Over to you.
Okay, so I feel completely disqualified for this whole tip thing, because I feel that all of you can give me tips on how to hone my research better and what is it that I have left out. And in fact, I've learned a lot from this whole male nursing, because I did not have male nurses as part of my field work, because in West Bengal, there were hardly any male nurses. So, and those who were there were in the private sector. I think that some of, but some suggestions, some thoughts that I could probably talk about, leave you with, is I think some brainstorming needs to be done about nursing education. What is it that constitutes nursing education? Do we move away from the Nightingale model? Can we see nursing education as technical, as scientific, and emotional, caring, and compassionate? They don't have to be in contradiction, but they can go together. So also, I think the second thing is, as nurses, can you politicize care? As nurses, can you say that, oh, we don't care, we cure? But as nurses, can you say that without caring, you will not heal? Without caring, life will not be reproduced. There will be no continuity of life. So the compassionate and the caring side of healthcare, how do you say that this is central to healing, not central to nursing, but central to healing? And that this is hard work, and that this is skilled work. And I think the third suggestion, question, tip, whatever is, can you as nurses, we as women, all of us as those who consider themselves feminists, those who aspire to be feminists, can we think about how effectively we can organize to resist exploitation? I think that is important. And I feel that this is something that nursing leaders, those who are senior, those who have many years of experience, can actually talk about, can share with younger women how they can actually come together and resist this kind of an exploitation and discrimination that both men and women in nursing face. So I don't know if this was much of a tip though.
No, that's a good one. And I think you should continue with male nurses as your research topic, because actually on Sunday we are having a webinar on image of male nurses in India. I mean, these are small things that we are trying to do recently. This is all COVID given benefits that we are actually starting to think of issues. How much this will translate into action, we are not very sure, but I think we are moving somewhere. But for your research areas, this as well as caring, I mean, how do we value caring? This is another important research topic, because honestly, some of this could be collaborative research. It's very hard. This is a problem we always had. There is no value. We cannot put a cost to caring.
Absolutely.
This is the struggle. This is a struggle in nursing. And while we have a lot of professional work, we don't want to lose on the caring aspect. You asked a very relevant question. Without caring, we can't be nurses. But caring does not mean it is, I mean, it has to be taught. Actually, we are trying to have research where we want to evaluate nursing students for caring. Like listening to somebody is caring. If you don't care, you won't listen. And giving an appropriate response, or touch in the right manner. If we don't touch somebody, touching somebody in a patient care is so significant. And actually we are giving of ourselves. So I'm sure you realize that we have to interact with strange people in no time. And this requires skill. This requires education. How many women can say hello and smile at somebody whom we have never seen in our life? So these are all aspects for research. I'm so glad that you're doing some work on this, and together we might be able to reach somewhere. Rupa, over to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, Panchali. It was a lovely session. But please don't go away, because we are just crossing our time limit, and therefore I am doing formal closing. But our session will be, continuing, and we are having one more very special speaker who is going to share his wisdom speech with us. So with that note, I just wanted to end this show saying that thank you very much, Panchali, for adding vocabulary in our, today I really learned so many new terminology like social reproduction, moral economy, unionization, feminism. Yeah. So, and apart from that, I really wanted to re-emphasize the point which you actually given us as a tips. And let me tell you, I request all my friends, my senior, my colleague, please, it's a very valid point. Like nursing education, it is high time. Nursing education is in our hand. We are the faculty, we are the trainer, we are teaching the next generation. It's in our hand. It's up to us that how we are grooming them. It's not written on the books. So please, it's the high time that you should start thinking beyond the books. Second is a technical and scientific. It's a high time that redefining the nursing as a profession beyond gender. It's a high time that we should define it from a scientific perspective rather than just being a female care. It's a high time that we should stop talking it as it's a noble profession. No, it is profession. It's a scientific profession. And third, most important point, resist exploitation. Definitely. It's a high time, just like a car, when it goes over speed. If you buy a car, doesn't mean that you have the authority and you have a power to just riding that car over the speed like more than 100. No, you cannot do it. So similarly for the profession also, there should be a fine line up to where you are ready to exploit yourself or you're ready to bear. But after that, it is a high time that you should at least speak that no, this is not right. I really wanted to raise one question here with all the union. How many times unions actually goes on strike for asking the quality workplace, apart from the salary, apart from the leaves? So it's a high time we should talk about the quality in a workplace, quality in a profession also. With that note, I really wanted to end the show, and we will be there next week with the new master, new guest speaker on the show. And now over to you, Nagendra sir. Sridevi ma'am, I request please invite sir, and Panchali, we have already introduced you, Nagendra sir.
Okay. Dr. Nagendra Prakash, please unmute yourself. He had a question on what about